sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
It is Monday, it is 12:30, and that means it is time for another edition of Bolts Brown Bag. Welcome to 10news.com, our 10 News Cafe patio, a beautiful Monday afternoon for more reasons than one. First and foremost, the weather is great, but secondly, the Chargers have ended their three-game losing streak. They got a 13-6 win over the Raiders, and joining me today to talk about it, a pleasure to have former Chargers offensive lineman, now post-game host on Rock 105.3, Mike Goff with us. And Mike, the Chargers needed that one badly. Good to have you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and it is a lovely day. And after watching a lot of football yesterday and Saturday and seeing how the rest of the world is, or at least the rest of the nation is just struggling, it's nice to be able to sit outside and see the sun shining and just have it be a wonderful, beautiful day. So it's good to be out here joining you and discussing some Charger football.
All right, well, we talk about it. You've got up there on the page, we've got our poll question for the day, our Bolts Brown Bag poll question. Today's question, which of the 6-4 teams in the AFC right now do you think is the best? And you've actually got 6 choices. You've got the Chargers, the Dolphins, the Colts. You've got the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Browns, all at 6-4, all fighting either for a wild card or a division title. And you go ahead and make the call yourself there and vote in our poll. We'll keep track as we go through. The Ravens with the early lead, but I think you can make an argument for several of those teams.
Well, I think you can make arguments for them all because there's a reason why they're 6-4. You look at the Colts last night and what you saw happen off a bye to get dismantled by New England has to be questioned. Then you look at the Ravens, who have their whole issue and they have everything going on with them. But I think you just, in my mind, with Andrew Luck as your quarterback, he holds the lead. But you don't want to sleep on Baltimore or what Ben Roethlisberger, take away the demise that happened last week in New York. You don't want to take anything away from him either.
All right, we'll talk about the playoff chase heading into the final 6 games as we move forward. But I want to start with a little bit of discussion about yesterday's game, and I'm going to begin with a soundbite. The first thing, basically, that Mike McCoy said after the game yesterday, after wishing his daughter a happy birthday, here's what head coach Mike McCoy said about the Chargers' 13-6 win over the Oakland Raiders.
An outstanding team performance today. I think that we know this was a good football team. The Oakland Raiders coming in. We talked about it with you guys early in the week, and a lot of talented players, and they gave us everything. And they played extremely hard, and our players played hard also. So it was a really good football game.
Was it really a good football game, though? That's the question. An outstanding team effort. I mean, he went on and acknowledged, okay, yeah, there was some problems in the passing game on offense. The Chargers only scored 13 points. That's usually not going to get the job done in the NFL. And while the defense did play well, they stepped up, if it wasn't the Raiders and their offense they were playing against, do you think the Chargers would have won that game yesterday?
I don't think so. I think when you look at defensively, it's a good thing Oakland is one of the worst teams when it comes to execution. And the one thing that the Raiders did not do, which even as bad as they've been for the better part of probably a dozen years, is that they've always been able to run the ball. They've always had running backs who were able to consistently ground and pound. And yesterday the defense took that out of the equation. So you left it on Derek Carr. They shut him down. He still had some big passes when they weren't getting to him with the pass rush. But I think that going off a bye, playing one game in about 20-some days, to just only score 13 points against an Oakland Raider team that is atrociously bad, who might be the second team in the NFL to ever go 16-0, I don't know if I'm going to say that was a great team victory. I think that was a thank goodness we didn't lose at home to the Raiders victory.
Now, the good news is once you've got the win, you can spin it pretty much any way you want to in the locker room. And the Chargers were already doing that after the game. Phillip Rivers, several of the guys, hey, we got the win. And I think Phillip said, you know, if we had scored 35 and lost, we'd be feeling sick right now. And he said even before the game, hey, if it's 13-10 and we win, I'm going to be perfectly happy with that. Well, it nearly was 13-10, but they got the win, and he claimed he was perfectly happy with that. So, I mean, the bottom line is they're 6-4. It's a lot better than 5-5, and they're still alive in the AFC West. They're only a game back of the Chiefs and the Broncos, and they're still in the wild card race. So that's what they had to get done.
Well, you want to be relevant, and that's the thing you need to do is you need to make sure that when people put up that grid about the the wild card or the playoff race, you want to make sure you are still on that list. And it would have been a huge crushing blow to this Charger team if they would have lost yesterday. Now, with that being said, I've been in games where you've won and you don't feel good about it. And this is one of those games. Yes, you're happy because you won, because it's better than losing. But you're still going to kind of have that little sick feeling in your stomach as you watch this film and realize that you had so many just different miscues on offense that led to no points. And I think that is something that needs to get addressed if you still want to be considered relevant in the playoff picture.
Hey, Mike, the Chargers we know have good offensive skill players. Phillip Rivers is a great quarterback. There's Keenan Allen, there's Malcolm Floyd, there's Antonio Gates. Ryan Matthews was back. He was running pretty well yesterday, at least from what I saw. So is it fair to just pin the entire struggles of the offense on the offensive line? And I hate to do that, blame your guys. I mean, you're an offensive lineman, but when I look at the team, it's hard to offensively say, well, where did they get so much worse in the last few weeks?
Well, I think it is fair. I think that, here, I'm never one to throw my own kind underneath the bus, but the offensive line these past 4 weeks has taken a step back, and that's got to be a huge area of concern. Way too much time in the running game are they playing on their own side of the line of scrimmage. They're not getting the push needed to help open up lanes. Now, we saw Ryan Matthews break his long yesterday was 20 yards. He had 16 carries for 70 yards, which was a good welcome back, good to get back into the meat of how it is to play. But I think that when Brandon Oliver was the one that was taking a majority of it, he was too young to be able to just have patience with the offensive line. And the offensive line needs to do a better job of taking the battle to the opponent's side of the line of scrimmage. And in pass protection, can't have Phillip Rivers have somebody in his face each and every time he steps back. Now, you think about that first pass that he had to Malcolm Floyd, where it's a beautiful pass, beautiful catch, touchdown, second play from scrimmage for the Chargers. That's wonderful. But that was about the last clean pocket that we saw Phillip Rivers have. And what I saw yesterday was I saw Phillip Rivers be upset. He seemed to just be kind of out of whack because he's getting hit. He had 5 quarterback hits yesterday, 2 sacks, and he's just been under duress these past 4 weeks. So what we're seeing him kind of do that. I'm going to try and force something in between double coverage, and that's led to a couple interceptions these past couple weeks.
We got a question in, and you can always submit your questions on Twitter if you want to go to @BoltsBrownBag. You got comments for us. Love to have them. Brian, since we're talking about the offensive line, tweeted in, how bad is Nick Hardwick's absence looking at this team right now? Is that the main problem, just the absence of Nick Hardwick, or is it a bigger issue?
Well, I think that's one of the issues, is because he was such an important part of this offensive line. When you have a guy like Nick Hardwick, and he is a very intelligent, bright young man, he is a guy that controls everything on that offensive line. With him being gone, and then Rich Ornberger being hurt, and then Chris Watt, and then you had Doug Legursky, and out of all the places where you have a rotation or a swinging door of people coming in to play center. Center is such an important position that you need to find someone who's going to shore it up.
All right, Mike, I've been looking forward to this portion of the show. It's time for What's for Lunch, and we got Brandon Chambers, our sous chef, in with us. But, Brandon, you probably don't know this, but Mike is quite an accomplished home chef.
Yes, I have
You've
read
seen
about
this
that.
before.
Yes.
Okay, so
one of his hobbies, one of his best hobbies, I've heard.
Exactly. So, and then, Brandon, he works cooking all the time, but is trying to become a football player. So it seems like I had to get the two of you together just to compare notes. But, Brandon, what do we have for lunch today?
Today we have the grilled pepper mesquite pork steak with the side of au gratin potatoes and steamed mixed vegetables with cauliflower, broccoli, and some carrots.
I can tell you that you've been grilling those up out here, and the smell is fantastic.
It smells unbelievable.
Well seasoned. I can just tell by the smell out here. Now, last week, Brandon is a semi-pro developmental wide receiver, and last week you were telling us he's got a 4.40 time. But the one thing that you need to do is to try to put on a little weight and muscle.
Yes.
Now, as an offensive lineman, you probably know a little bit about putting on weight and muscle. So I don't know if there's any.
The weight part has no problem. That's easy. You kind of eat like this for a while. You'll go ahead and put on the weight.
Right. So maybe that's just the key. But Brandon's trying to get it done on that. And any tips you've got for an aspiring football player?
Hey, hard work. Hard work is the number one thing. I think what happens is if you think this is going to be easy, then you've already set yourself up for failure. But to just know that if you are passionate about something and you want to be a football player or a chef or whatever you want to do, I tell the kids that I coach down in high school that, hey, hard work, I believe that if you continue to work hard, eventually it's going to pay off. It's when you stop believing in yourself and stop believing in hard work is when you take a step back and you just can't do it.
That was like a Saturday morning special. That was great, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, we know Brandon works hard around here. Everyone knows that. What did you think about the game yesterday? I mean, low scoring, maybe not exactly what we all expected.
Yesterday, I actually went to the game, so I got to enjoy the game live. What I seen was, honestly, a lot of defense. The offense, on offensive side, on both teams, I think they were playing to not make mistakes. So once they started focusing on not trying to make mistakes, there wasn't really a lot of big plays, big bombs to Malcolm Floyd, and just they weren't really in that Charger rhythm like they used to be. And it seemed pretty slow, and at the end, the Raiders kind of started getting a little momentum going, and if there's probably 5 quarters, I don't know, there might have been a little better game.
Brandon, you bring up a good point because the Chargers didn't turn the ball over in yesterday's game, and they won. And they won without a lot of big plays. I mean, is it better to be going around and making giant plays, but occasionally it costs you a turnover, an interception here or there? Or is the better strategy to be conservative, make sure you hold on to the ball, and not let the other team capitalize on your mistakes?
In my mind, it is to get back to your style of football, and what we saw yesterday was not the style of football that I think this Charger team wants to be known for. They weren't. They ran up 120 yards on the ground, but it was one big run play, and it just wasn't as crisp. It seemed like it was, all right, well, we got a 1 yard, or 2 yard, and wasn't consistent. And then same thing with the pass protection was if you don't give Philip Rivers time, he is not able to dissect the defense. And so when they started to go 2 minute towards the sporadically, I thought they moved it well, but you got to consistently do it. And I think that maybe just too much time has gone by where they were out of sync, and they need to get that right, and I think they all know that.
All right, well, we'll see a little bit more when they take on the Rams on Sunday. Brandon, great. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
That looks fantastic. You've tempted Mike as soon as the show is over. I am sure he's going to be digging in, but good to see you as always.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right,
Nice
what's for
Nice
lunch
meeting you.
with Brandon Chambers, our sous chef here at our 10 News Cafe. Midway point of the show, each week we give out a Bolts Brown Bagger of the Game Award, one of the unsung players who brings their lunch pail and doesn't normally get a lot of the credit. So without further ado, this week's Bolts Brown Bagger of the game is, yeah, that's right, inside linebacker Cavell Connor. And Cavell led the Chargers in tackles with 9 yesterday. He had a sack. And I thought you saw an interesting switch with John Pagano in the defense. They only had Donald Butler in during the base packages, and they took him out, which meant Cavell Connor was on the field a little bit more. And the guy who you spent a lot of money on in the offseason, Donald Butler, played about half as much as he usually does. And he's been struggling. So kind of a big shift for the Chargers yesterday.
Well, and sometimes that's what you need to do is if somebody isn't having their best time, you need to go ahead and take some of the pressure off of him. And that's what he has been able to do since he's been over here from Indianapolis, which ironically I didn't even know. I had to actually look up Cavell Connor's bio because I didn't know very much about him, was that he is an Indianapolis Colts guy, which means,
Tom Telesco signed him.
Tom Telesco knows who Cavell Connor is. And I think Cavell Connor brings just a new dynamic to this defense. And if you can have depth where you can just be rolling in fresh players, like we saw Manti Te'o back on the field, Melvin Ingram. We saw Jerry Atachi had a big sack late in the fourth quarter. These guys start to get healthy. It allows older guys like a Jarrett Johnson or Dwight Freeney, not that Donald Butler is old, but it gives him a chance to maybe not have to have all the burden on his shoulders.
I thought health was a big issue in yesterday's game, and the Chargers, I thought got good performances from most of the guys who came back. Ryan Matthews, Manti Te'o, Jerry Atauchu had the big sack there on the final Raiders drive. He was back. Melvin Ingram played a solid game back as well. But on the other side, the big worry, especially in the third quarter, was Phillip Rivers going down. And when he was on the ground crawling and then jumped up and couldn't put any weight there on his left leg, boy, you just see the season kind of flash before your eyes like this is it for the Chargers. Yet he stayed in the game. I mean, how serious did that look to you at the time?
Well, any time that you see Phillip Rivers take his time getting himself off the ground, you know that something's up, because I've played with the man. I was in the game where he had the torn ACL in the AFC Championship game, so you can't question the man's heart and just how he wants to be out on the field. Now, I will say that to see some of the hits that he has taken, which is why I've been hard on this offensive line, because I do believe that this team goes when 17 goes. And if you're not protecting him and keeping him upright, then you're struggling, because of the fact that if he has somebody in his face consistently, he forces throws, and until the running game becomes more consistent like it did during the 5-game win streak, you got to keep 17 upright and healthy.
Take me back to that week, January 2008, end of the 2007 season. I was in Indy when Phillip got hurt, and I think it was in the third quarter, and Billy Volek came in and finished the game. You guys beat the Colts, and I remember just seeing, the offensive linemen, everyone down on the field after the game. That was one of the most joyous occasions I've seen for a Chargers team. You guys were fired up.
Oh, it was exciting.
What was from that point on, though? What did you find out about Phillip's injury during the week? Because this was all kind of kept from the media and fans, how serious it was, until after the AFC Championship game had been played, and we found out that Phillip had surgery on Monday and had torn his ACL. And most guys, you get a torn ACL, it's 6 to 9 month injury. Phillip was back out there a week later.
Well, what they did was, from what we were told, was he was going to go in for a minor procedure on Monday, and it wasn't going to be a big deal. And I think what it was they went in to kind of scope it out and try and get it to where he was able to manage through a game. And to play with a torn ACL on that kind of stage, and you notice, if you can kind of go back in your memory about how he was moving around that pocket, he wasn't. And that's just what you can do with a torn ACL. But the fact that the man wanted to be out there to play in an AFC Championship game just shows his heart and commitment to this team. And you gotta applaud him, but at the same time, you need him for the rest of the season. So it'll be interesting to see what comes from this week.
Not only did he played over 200 yards passing, and you guys could have won that game over an undefeated Patriots team. That was 2 or 3 plays. Fourth down run. Junior came that stop of Michael Turner on fourth down. Just a couple of plays here or there, and that game easily could have been switched, and you guys could have been headed to the Super Bowl.
That would have been something.
I know, that would have been amazing.
If and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry
True.
Christmas.
But it's not just the leg, because after the game, and this was kind of interesting as well, Antonio Gates let slip. I don't know exactly what was going on, but mentioned that Phillip Rivers has been dealing with what he called a severe rib injury, that he said he's getting shots, which I took to mean pain-killing injections before the game for the last 3 to 4 weeks. Strategically, the Chargers don't like talking about injuries, so I'm not surprised. In fact, your friend and our former Bolts Brown Bag co-host Brady Phelps asked what the Chargers are feeling about Antonio Gates, you think, right now, revealing that injury information about Phillip Rivers.
Well, it's hard to criticize a future Hall of Famer, so what probably happened was the old ball coach addressed the team and said, hey, just a friendly service reminder that we don't discuss injuries in front of the media. We'll handle all that. And I think that with what Antonio Gates said, I think he was probably tired of hearing people ask what was wrong with Phillip Rivers. Why isn't he doing what he was doing before? And the thing about that relationship that those two guys have is that it's almost, they've been together for 11 years. And to have the relationship that they have had, which is, I want to say 68 or 69 touchdown passes between the two of them, is mind-blowing. So Antonio Gates just wants to stick up for his friend and his teammate Phillip Rivers.
You know, I've always wondered how do the players feel about that? Because last season, for instance, Manti Te'o, we found out after the season, had been playing injured all year long. And you just wonder when the coaches refuse to let any of that get out and you keep hearing the same question, hey, what's wrong with this guy? Boy, he doesn't look any good. I mean, could we find out at the end of the season that Donald Butler's been playing through some injuries and that's why he doesn't look good, but they don't talk about it and they don't want to put it out there. So all of a sudden we're start questioning a guy's talent, their future in the league, when maybe they're just hurt and the Chargers coaches aren't talking about that. Can that be frustrating for a player?
Well, it is, but what it comes down to is that they come out with that injury report each and every week. And the thing about it is that if you just watch the film, you're going to see that somebody isn't playing very well. And so if you're a coaching staff worth your salt, you're going to see that just through repetitive film study, and you're going to adjust your game plan around that. Whether or not you know someone's injured or not, this just kind of helps the team going forward, that when they play the Rams now know, okay, well, Antonio Gates came out and said this, so he would know better. And that's probably why, if it was a rookie or somebody, there would probably be somewhat of a bigger repercussion. But with somebody like Antonio Gates, it's probably going to be a general statement to the whole team. But what it is that the Rams team coming in now knows that, and they're going to watch the offensive line, and they're going to watch just what kind of stunts they've had trouble with, or who has really had trouble with one-on-one pass blocking. So what it does is it doesn't really change the fact of the injury, but it just, because they'll be watching it anyway, but now they know, and they'll probably tee off on it.
I mean, they were going to be going after Phillip Rivers 100% anyway,
Yes,
so
without a doubt.
Doesn't really change too much. One thing I love about Phillip is that he puts things into perspective, I think, really well. I mean, 5-game winning streak, 3-game losing streak, get back to the win. Phillip does really follow what he preaches. Never get too high, never get too low. He talked a little bit about it after the game yesterday.
I feel like we tend to overreact here a little bit, both good and bad. It's NFL. I mean, I wonder what they're thinking in Denver right now. I mean, this guy's not falling there. They're still, what happened? I don't know. They lost a football game. The other team played better. I mean, same thing happened in Pittsburgh and New York. I mean, we can go on and on and on this week. What happened in Cleveland? Houston went to Cleveland and won. That's not what happened. What happened? Why did Cleveland do that? Well, because they're playing Houston, I mean, so it's the NFL, and every team's trying to win. I don't care what the record is. They got good players on both teams. They're in this league for a reason. So it's great to win again, but we've never doubted that we were going to get back on track. You just have to go do it.
When you're sitting at a table like this and talking about the team, everything's huge. You analyze every little thing. But in a way, Phillip is absolutely right. I mean, just because you've lost 3 in a row doesn't mean that you're not still a good team. Just because you've won 5 in a row doesn't mean the ground can't fall out from beneath your feet the next step. That's what the NFL is nowadays. And it's becoming, in my mind, Mike, more and more unpredictable with each week and each game. And you just can't – I don't bet on the NFL, and I feel very confident about that decision because you just never know what's going to happen.
Well, I think what we see now is that, yeah, there is overreaction, but it's good to have overreaction like that, because that means you've set this city and this town up to a certain way of how they're used to seeing things. And during my time in Cincinnati, people got the town was used to us losing, so it wasn't a big deal. But here, the culture that Phillip Rivers has set with this team and how he's gone out and performed on the field, he has set the bar very high. So is it overreaction, or is it just somebody else not getting used to seeing this team struggle, especially on offense?
Mike, let me introduce you to Ferris. He is our high inquisitor.
How
He
you doing?
comes in each week with our 3 questions. But Ferris is a big Cincinnati Bengals fan.
I am.
So,
sorry.
Mike played
Honor
for
to
the
meet you.
Bengals. I mean, the heyday of the Bengals, when you really feel like the Cincinnati Bengals were at their apex. Was kind of your years?
It was an inverted apex, so it was.
I wanted to ask you because you played with Achilles Smith.
I did.
Am I right?
I did.
You played with John Kitna.
I did.
How do they compare to Andy, Jekyll, and Hyde, Dalton?
Oof, well, it's probably the same. It's all just the same. They morphed into one another, and that's been part of the problems there in Cincinnati, is that you got to get consistent play out of your quarterback, and we've seen out of Andy Dalton is kind of the best and worst of both Achilles Smith and John Kitna, where one week it's amazing, Then the next week, not amazing.
With one big difference, Andy has a much bigger bank account.
This is true.
All right, what are your 3 questions today? Question number 1, Ferris.
Okay, so there's a scenario in which a 6-10 or 7-9 Falcons team could be hosting a playoff game,
Okay.
while the Niners and Seahawks are at home watching it on TV. Is this okay? Is this right? Does the NFL need to do something about this?
Until they change it, it's the way that the rules are. And
I mean, it's not right, but at the same
not right,
time,
but it's the
you
rules.
can't change it in the middle of the season. I
No.
mean, everyone was playing. They knew what the rules were. You win your division, you win it at 5-11. You're going to the playoffs. And you asked this a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I mean, you play different schedules as a team. You play your division, twice. It's completely different. So there should be a reward for winning your division. 6-10 though does feel a little awkward. If there's a 10-6 team sitting home while a 6-10 team is in the playoffs, that doesn't feel quite right to me.
Well, I'm actually surprised they didn't change that whole rule the year we went 8-8 and ended up hosting a playoff game, and a lot of people were upset because New England Patriots were at home when they didn't win their division. And so I'm surprised they didn't change it then, but I will say that after that playoff game when we did beat the Colts in overtime, they did change the rule of, all right, well, Peyton Manning didn't get a chance, so we're going to change that rule. So I think if we see another sub-500 team win their division and host a playoff game, then I think that the NFL committee
and they've been
will
winning.
get
I mean, the
together.
Chargers won at 8-8 over the Colts that year. At 7-9, the Seahawks beat the Saints
Correct.
at home. So now is it going to be the Falcons' turn at 7-9 or 6-10 to win a playoff game? There might be a change in the offseason this time.
There could be.
Yeah. All right. Question number 2.
Question number 2. All right. The Bears, they're the team, the gift they keep on giving in terms of news. Professor Emeritus Brandon Marshall challenged a Lion fan on Twitter, probably my favorite story of the year, to a boxing match with a $25,000 purse. Is he insane or insanely brilliant?
Well, he has been diagnosed with bipolar,
Well, yeah.
so it depends who was challenging, I guess.
I mean, even if the fan agreed to it, there's just absolutely no way the NFL would ever let that happen. So, I mean, I
He
guess
said he wanted to get it on Showtime pay-per-view.
there's just no way.
Well, I don't see it happening, but if it does, I'd probably check it out.
Yeah,
see what
I mean,
happened.
it would be
It'd be
interesting.
entertaining,
But
but
there's, I mean, Roger Goodell, you'd never see him move faster if they tried to do that. You're going to fight one of our fans. That's great customer relations right there.
Well, and you got to remember Brandon Marshall. He's a guy who says things that are very outlandish and it's very controversial. And I think that's just him probably getting tired of everybody talking bad about how bad the Bears have been or how they haven't lived up. So in my mind, that's just probably a publicity stunt by Brandon
I mean, but
Marshall.
look at the Bears and just what we were talking about, unpredictability. I mean, has a team looked any worse than the Bears did the last couple of weeks? They started out poorly yesterday and then got it back going and looked okay and got a win. I mean, that's how things change so quickly in this league.
Well, that and you see that Jay Cutler finally had more touchdowns than interceptions. And just like because this is such a quarterback league, if your quarterback goes, your offense usually goes. And he finally did better than he did against Green Bay because that was an atrocious performance.
All right, we'll rub the lamp one more time for our third question, and then
All
the
right.
genie goes away.
So there were a couple upsets yesterday. Bengals over Saints, Rams over Broncos, Texans over Browns, Chiefs over Seahawks. That was kind of a pseudo upset. There are 9 teams separated by 1 game in the AFC. So who do you see emerging from the fray?
Well, that kind of goes back to our poll question. All those 6 and 4 teams
Yeah.
right now, which one's the best? I said a couple of weeks ago after their win over the Chargers, but not just because of it, that I like the Miami Dolphins a lot right now. I think they've got enough balance. Ryan Tannehill is playing at a level that's certainly high enough to get his team to the playoffs. I still like Miami to emerge in the AFC, and I like Kansas City right now a lot too. I mean, they're actually, I put them up more on the level of where the Patriots and the Broncos are right now among the elite teams.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Kansas City. I got a chance to watch that Kansas City-Seattle game yesterday, and even though Seattle isn't the same team on the road or the same team as last year because they're missing some of their players that left and got hurt, but what Kansas City has been able to do after starting the season 2-3, they've won their last 5 games, and they've done it convincingly over good teams. Last year, everybody was criticizing them for being 9-0 but not beating anybody. Now they're beating good teams that have good offenses, and the way their defense is playing, the fact that Tamba Hali and Justin Houston have stayed healthy, and DeMar Poe in the middle. This team is just, it's not flashy. It just works.
Do you think they could go into Foxborough and beat the Patriots?
Well, right now they have
playoff game?
right now they have the tiebreaker. So if they keep winning,
They could, yeah, they could be the
they
one
could
seed.
because if you think about it, the Broncos still have to go to Kansas City. The Chargers still have to go to Kansas City. They do have a short week against Oakland, but that would be the biggest upset of the year if somehow Oakland defeats Kansas City this Thursday.
Well, Thursday night games, home teams always seem to have that edge. Maybe there's another surprise in store.
Could be.
I would love for that last game, Week 17, to mean something for the Chargers
And
the
it
Chiefs.
could.
That would be very, very interesting.
Absolutely.
At this point. Ferris, as always, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank
Three
you.
Nice meeting
questions
you.
with Ferris. Since we're talking about the AFC standings, let's take a look at where the Chargers currently stand right now in the AFC West, with Denver losing to the St. Louis Rams yesterday. We got a log jam atop the division, and now the Broncos and Chiefs are both at 7-3. The Broncos still have the head-to-head tiebreaker with their win over the Chiefs. The Chargers, though, just a game back. So the division's not out of the question. They probably need to, of course, beat both the Broncos and Chiefs on the way in. But if the Chargers could find a way to do that, they should be still very much in the thick of things in the AFC West.
Well, and again, it just you want to make sure that you're considered relevant. You look at the bottom team who's
Boy, that's ugly.
That is
ugly.
atrocious. In 12 years of the NFL, I've never been that bad. I think the worst start I ever had was 0-7, and that was brutal. It's actually kind of sad, even though it was such a great play that Antonio Gates had against Charles Woodson to help eat more time off the clock yesterday. Two Hall of Famers going at it for a ball that means something, and to just see Charles Woodson be 0-10, a guy who has just done so much for the sport, to be 0-10 and going out like this is it's sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, switching over to the wild card standings, as Ferris mentioned, really bunched up still in the AFC. Two fighting here. Okay, we don't have the standings up right now, but two teams. Chiefs are 7-3. The Dolphins currently at 6-4 have the tiebreakers, but all those other 6-4 teams we mentioned in the poll question are still tied and right there. So we've got the Chargers, the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Steelers, and the Browns, and then the Colts, who are also 6-4, but they're leading their division. So that is the poll results right now. Which of those teams do you think is the best? Right now, the Dolphins are winning, but not. It's a very small majority. 29% say the Dolphins. Colts and Ravens have 26% of the vote. Chargers 13% of the vote, and then the Steelers with just 6% of the vote, and the Browns are down at the bottom, somewhere negligible number of votes. So those are the standings right now. I don't remember. I mean, it's always close in the NFL.
Sure.
I don't remember ever seeing it like that with just six games left in the season.
I think you look at the 8 and 9 seed, the Ravens and the Steelers, just how veteran of a squad those two teams are. You always got to be leery of those kind of teams, because if they get on a roll and the veteran players kind of take over and bring the younger guys along, you could see those guys making big strides. Now, you got the Steelers playing tonight on Monday Night Football, so that may help clear up the picture here a little bit. But Ravens are going to be coming off of their bye, and the Chargers go there in 2 weeks, so it'll be a huge matchup with implications there.
Critical, but first the Chargers have to get by the St. Louis Rams next week, and as you mentioned, coming off the win over the Broncos, playing as well as they are, and with one of the best front sevens in all of football. I mean, they sacked Colin Kaepernick 9 times. Yeah. I mean, and with the Chargers offensive line, you've got to be a little bit nervous if you're a Chargers fan with the Rams coming to town. Luckily, the game's here, I think, which gives the Chargers a better chance.
Well, not only is the game here, but what you're probably going to see is more running back chipping on the ends, because right now this St. Louis defense they're aggressive and they're going to play mean. And this offense needs to match that meanness, and they have to play a nasty game if they want to go ahead and dominate this Rams defense. They got to play nasty, and they got to get after them, and it's as simple as that.
The defense is going to have to play as well or better as they did yesterday. We could see another low-scoring game next week. Surprise, but we could.
Well, you do got Sean Hill at the quarterback, so it is. But Trey Mason, I think that's going to be the X factor for this Charger defense. Make sure you stop Trey Mason, because even though he's a rookie, he is starting to show spurts, and he ran for 100 and I want to say 30-some yards yesterday. So you need to make sure that you don't allow the big plays.
All right, speaking of big guys, we got another big ex-Charger legend joining us next week on the Brown Bag. You want to join us next Monday at 12:30. Louis Kelcher is going to be in town for the blood drive. He's going to be sitting in and joining us via Skype. We're scheduled to have Chargers fan extraordinaire and Letterman writer Eric Stengel's going to be with us. So it should be a fun show next week. Chargers trying to take on the St. Louis Rams. Mike, it was a pleasure to have you in.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoyed having you with the Bolts Brown Bag, and thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure.
All right, until next week, this has been Bolts Brown Bag on 10news.com/Bolts Brown Bag. Have a good one.